My name is Surda, or Peter in English. I do full-time economic research of Bitcoin now. I started doing Bitcoin research as such about 3 years ago, and I went full-time about a year ago. And I find it such a fascinating area that I cannot really do anything else. Originally I was in IT. I have been programming for about 25 years since I was a kid. But I did study on the Vienna University of Economics and Business. And I had one of my jobs was for an online payments processor, so I came in touch with how the payments work. And when I discovered Bitcoin, all kinds of areas that I was interested in came together. The economic theory, how property rights work, how payment systems work, open source programming, and that simply gained my interest gradually, and now, as I said, I can't do anything else. When you have a competition among media of exchange, there is a tendency for a small number of winners to emerge that are like the dominant ones, and there other ones can exist, but they will have a subordinated function. Now, if in order for something to outcompete Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency, you need to have a significant advantage either in liquidity or in transaction cost. Most of the cryptocurrencies, as far as I can see, do not have that at the moment. However, there are two that I consider significantly different, so that there could actually be an advantage hypothetically. One of them is Ripple, the other one is open transactions and the possibility to do to issue some mechanism based on that. So I don't know the Ripple in the technical details as much as I know about Bitcoin, so I cannot really comment on that. I just read in the news today that they it was on Reddit, I think, that they're talking to banks and they're trying to get banks using their technology. So I think that's promising. I don't know how to what extent that will be successful or more successful of Bitcoin. It's possible that it will be a complementary thing because it's significantly different, but I'm still keeping my eye on Ripple, and I see it as an interesting project, but we'll see how it develops. Actually, I had a presentation here in Amsterdam about 2 months ago. It's on, I don't think it's on YouTube, it's on Vimeo or whatever it's called, Vimeo, where I talk about differences between hierarchical and decentralized systems. So a lot of people, not necessarily only bankers, but also economists and politicians, they're used to systems working through hierarchies. And that's actually, that's understandable because the current system is built like that, and also its security model is based on that you do not need to the hierarchy for the system to work. If you try to flatten it and give more people access to more power in the system, then it will collapse, it cannot function. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, it's just the way I'm trying to describe how it is and why. But with Bitcoin, it's a more decentralized system. There is no need for hierarchy to restrict access to others, because that doesn't improve the security or the functionality. And because those systems are so significantly different, it poses, in many areas, it could be a competitive advantage. That does not necessarily mean one of them will win in the end and the other one will collapse, but at least conceptually one can recognize that because it's significantly different, it can be an advantage. And hierarchical systems, some of the reasons why economists should be interested in decentralized systems is that there are economic problems specific to hierarchies. The first one is that I described as the economic calculation problem. Central banks, they are not restricted in their output by the prices of the inputs, so they cannot determine what and how to produce based on economic calculation. They need to do that based on a policy. The second issue is a principal-agent problem. If you delegate authority to make decision to someone else, unless the interests are aligned correctly, they will make it will make you worse off, and it will benefit the agents more. And the third problem is called concentrated benefits and dispersed costs, which means that if there's like something that needs to be changed, like a regulation or a type of system, if there is a small group of people that benefit a lot of it, and a large group of people that individually they only have a very small cost involved in that, then the lobbying efforts of the big group is more likely to happen, because they can pool their resources more effectively. Now, Bitcoin challenges all of these things because there's no need for a trusted third party, so you don't need the principal agent problem, can be avoided. It's easier to do crowdfunding, so the concentrated benefits dispersed costs is more difficult to take place, and the money supply is determined. There's basically a cost to generating new bitcoins, and that regulates the output. So it's an entirely different thing with entirely different properties, and whether you're skeptical or not, you cannot merely say that because this is how it worked now, that other thing won't work, because it's significantly different. The whole structure is different, and it challenges your thinking. So you need to accept that challenge and think about it a bit more. This is actually an interesting thing, because with Bitcoin, the blockchain itself is very transparent. It's probably one of the most transparent systems that ever existed. You can have, Bitcoin exchanges can have this proof of reserves, I think it's called. You cannot do that with the traditional systems. Like, you need someone to physically either go there, and if they have physical reserve, to inspect them and measure them, or you need to go through the accounts, and that's expensive. And there's also the conflict of interest sometimes if the regulators and or the auditors and whatever needs to be audited, if their interests are aligned. Again, that creates a problem, because a normal guy, Ron Paul, has been trying to get the Fed audited for like 30 years or something, and he was actually on the committee for financial oversight or something like that. So he's one of the people who, even in the hierarchy, has privileged access, but of course they didn't allow him. So you wonder if, when people say transparency, they obviously mean two different things depending on what you say. Because up till now, how people have been identified is like their name, their residence, and so on. That builds your identity. But that's a very costly way. As technology improves it, that becomes a very costly way of identifying people. So Bitcoin provides a different way of identifying people based on the public key cryptography. Now, if you know a public address, you don't necessarily know the name and the residence of the person, but it is a person that is identified uniquely. In theory, in the future, it can be like an autonomous agent. It doesn't necessarily need to be a person. It can be a computer or a machine. But so from this point of view, it's super transparent, but it's just not the transparency that people are used to. So that challenges them, and this creates a conflict, because it's a different way. So if it appears, what do? You need to either get rid of it, or you need to accept it because it's different. I'm not necessarily trying to say that trying to optimize your taxes is a good thing or a bad thing, but people will try to do that, and they will, of course, gravitate towards solutions that make that make it easier for them to do that, or better. And it's even entirely possible that the old ways of how taxes are done are not possible to do anymore in an efficient manner, and new ways would have to be designed. Or if you're a little bit more extremist, you might come to the conclusion that states cannot exist if you have something like Bitcoin, and then simply other ways of coordinating functions of society will need to be used. You need to be aware of the risks. I think from a global perspective, Jim Harper did a very good like risk assessment paper. He presented it yesterday. But from point of view of a person, first of all, it doesn't look like in any country owning and trading and buying things for Bitcoins is illegal. There might be some Asian countries where it's not entirely clear, but for most of the people, using Bitcoin as a regular business is there's no regulatory risk. So in the most, what you can lose is how much your balance is in Bitcoin, and once you know that, you can limit your exposure, and by that limiting your risk. Now, I agree that there are risks associated. I don't know how to quantify them, so I don't know if it's high or low. It really depends on if you compare it to something else. Traditionally, money has been seen as a relatively low-risk thing, but we saw what happened in Cyprus last year. People thought that they have money, and it turns out they didn't. There have been a lot of efforts on. There has been a lot of criticism of the current financial system, and there are a lot of different types of activists that try to propose alternatives. So. Yeah, you should see Bitcoin as an experiment, definitely, I agree. And you can, if you're risk averse, you need to understand how to limit your exposure. But if you are more willing to the risk, you can again try to figure out which way you can go to potentially benefit from it. Stop thinking about Bitcoin as money, start thinking about it as a medium of exchange that is not money. And some other examples are precious metals, some precious gems, some financial instruments like blue chip stocks, government bonds, what else is, and some credit issued by highly reputable individuals or banks, which is still not money. So a lot of these are are volatile, but people still keep them in hold because not only they expect to speculate on the price, but because they believe that if they need to sell it immediately, they can get more or less what it's worth because they're liquid. So that might help you to approach this, see it maybe more as an investment rather than money, and it might forever remain at this stage. It might never become money for all we know. But be aware that it's volatile, and when you hold it, then there's a risk that it will lose value. There's also a potential benefit if it rises in value, but don't hold more than you're comfortable with. And betting everything on it, I think I agree with Gavin that that's pretty risky, and I personally would not recommend it. If you love risk, don't let me tell you what to do, but just be aware of the risks. There are a lot of them. There are technical challenges. I think the technical challenges, we have a good chance of tackling them. The developers and the community has a good chance of tackling them. The reputation one, that's a bit of a weird thing, because some people think that it should be integrated with the financial system, and some people say it should not. So obviously, people, when somebody uses it in one of those areas, people from the other area will say, well, that's not good. Maybe once people understand that there is this conflict and that you can't the challenges in one area are different than the challenges in the other area. But I think in many countries the communication with regulators has been positive, and there are even now politicians that support Bitcoin. I think that helps Bitcoin. Then there's a lot of the details in how to get it out to the marketplace. A lot of the products are immature and they don't integrate yet well into whatever business what do you call it? Business processes. It doesn't integrate it well into business process. People are working on that as well. Then explaining it is also difficult. A lot of people have no idea what it means, or they just take the buzzwords, like let's say drugs, or on the other speculate bubble and whatever. These to a certain extent are correct, but it's not everything, you know. So this is also to understand the whole thing of Bitcoin is complicated, and not everybody might be willing to spend time. So we need to devise ways of how to pitch Bitcoin to individual groups. And then, of course, there are competitors to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. There's a risk there. There's a lot of stuff to do, and also you need to explain it to the intellectuals, to the people who think they understand things. A lot of them don't, or at least they don't understand the Bitcoin relevant things. So that's also important because they have a lot of sway in the public opinion. Yeah, there's a lot to do, and I'm happy if I can contribute to that somehow.